Judea is a psychic intuitive energy healer from the island of Kauai. And in this episode, we go deep, discussing everything from entity attachment and auras to extraterrestrials. Plus, Judea shares an unbelievable experience she had in the mountains of Peru that you definitely won't want to miss. This episode is not for the skeptic. However, if you are open to and curious about the existence of life beyond our physical senses, you just might uncover some magic that you always knew existed. Hang on tight. This is a fun one. Enjoy the conversation. Welcome, Judea.
Aloha.
Thanks for being here.
Exciting. We're doing this. I'm on video. This is new for me.
You are on video. I'm so used to hearing your voice, and I'm so excited to have you here and to talk with you. It's so exciting for me.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I've been watching what you've been doing so far, and it's really top notch. And so I'm happy to support it. And I like what you're doing. I like the vibe, the container you're creating with this podcast. And yeah, I'm happy to be here and share a little bit of my energy and medicine in your space.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot. It really does. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, and spirituality and self-help for years, and yours really stands out. You and Patty just have this authenticity where I believe that you believe every word you're saying. It's
Yes.
so authentic and so real. You come from a space of, this is my experience, and it feels truthful because it's your truth. And then I can take it or leave it if I want, but most of the time I take it because it's in alignment with what I believe.
I can't say that I predetermined that was the way the podcast was going to go. And I really had no reference point because I didn't really listen to a lot of podcasts before we started. I mean, I would listen, somebody would send me something once in a while. But really it was started out of Patty and I just having these really out there conversations, and we'd always be like, man, if people could hear us, like, I wonder what they would think. And I was like, let's record ourselves. And then it just kind of happened. So it was just sort of a natural segue into conversations that her and I were having for years, and just sharing it with people, not knowing what the response was going to be. And we hear that all the time, that people really resonate with what we're saying, and that they feel the authenticity of our expression and what we're saying, and not in this too woo-woo, but grounded kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. We're just doing what we're doing. I'm glad people are liking it.
Were you raised with any religious background, a religious upbringing of any kind? Where were you raised?
Okay, so I was raised in Ogdensburg, New York, which is a town that probably nobody has ever heard of. And it's on the Canadian border across from Ottawa, Canada, on the river, the St. Lawrence River. And I did not grow up with a religious background. My mother grew up Buddhist, and I think going into like sort of a Christian background a little bit in Korea, but that was like a whole separate entity from us growing up as American kids. She never pushed anything on us. And my English grandmother, my American grandmother, was Christian, and she had, crosses, and, she would say she'd pray all the time, but we didn't really know much about it. It was just sort of something that was in my atmosphere, but we didn't follow it. We never went to church. I only went to church with my friends on a sleepover or something like that, but there was no spiritual grounding of any type throughout my life, my youth.
When did you realize that you had your gifts? When did you realize that you were psychic and intuitive?
I would say it was when I left my hometown. I was 18 years old when I left. I had graduated high school, and there was a vibrational aspect, an energetic aspect as to why I think I woke up. And it was because I got out of a toxic and negative atmosphere. And that was something that was very oppressive to me, that I didn't realize until I had actually gotten out of it, how much it was holding me back and holding me down. And once I was able to sort of liberate these feelings of maybe judgment or, insecurity and all these things that were around me my entire life, I became more aware of things outside of this like little tiny safe bubble that I was always holding myself in. But in hindsight, when I looked back through those years before I left, before 18, I realized I always had gifts. In fact, as soon as I realized I was psychic, I was like, I've been seeing this my whole life. I just been telling myself that this is just like a glitch in my view, or that was my imagination. And so I would immediately write things off as soon as they would come in. And then when I hit about 19, I would say it started really 18 and then going into 19. When I was 19 was when I had my aha, like, there's more to this than I realized. And I started paying attention to these things that I was seeing. And then everything just opened up very quickly after that.
What were your first thoughts when you started having these realizations?
Probably one of my first thoughts was, I always wish that this was an actual thing and real. And it is. And I think that was the most mind-blowing thing to me, like telepathy and, anything, because I was always interested in the supernatural when I was younger. I'd always, borrow those books from the library or watch those couple TV shows, Unsolved Mysteries. And they'd always have that one little segment of somebody who had telekinesis or whatever, and I always thought that it wasn't real. But wouldn't that be really cool if it was? And so when I finally figured it out, that was just mind blowing to me that it actually is real. And it almost felt like I had been duped my whole life. Like, how is it that everybody has convinced me that this wasn't real? And now I know with absolute certainty it is real. And auras, I'm a clairvoyant. So I would see auras, I would say, would be the first thing that stuck out to me, is noticing the light and the energy around people and things and nature and basically everywhere. And then it was spirits. It was entities, spirits, things that were moving around in the ethers that nobody else could see, but I could see, was another thing that was very common. But in with that, I also realized that I had been seeing them all the time. I just was like, oh, that's weird. I thought I saw somebody walk by me, but nobody was there. And I just would do that my whole childhood and never really think to look and say, hey, who is that? What are you doing? I don't recall anybody actually approaching me as far as spirits go, but I would always see what I thought were people walking by, or I suddenly would have a feeling somebody's there and I would turn, or I thought somebody would walk into the house and they weren't there. And I just thought that was just like a natural human anomaly that happened to all of us, but apparently it wasn't. It was, paranormal.
Do you remember the oh shit moment? Like, oh, this is real. Like, what was that moment for you?
Well,
like,
with what,
this
though?
Is real.
Because I have an oh shit moment all the time. I get oh shit moments almost weekly now. It's like...
Okay, let's start with, you mentioned auras. You mentioned auras and you mentioned entities. Okay, so let's say you noticing someone's aura for the first time. Mm-hmm. Go ahead and, let's explain to those who don't really know what an aura is, and then how you were experiencing that.
So an aura is basically the atmosphere of energy that exists around somebody. So it's their own personal little field of energy. And I was 18 when this happened. And I remember specifically there was this woman who was standing near me, a young lady, and she was so beautiful. And I looked at her and I thought, my God, this woman is perfect. Just everything about her presence, the way she was dressed, her face. I mean, physically she was beautiful, but at the moment I didn't realize energetically what I was seeing was her light, and I'm looking at her thinking, my God, I want to be like her. Like, there's just something so alluring about this person. And I was sort of fixated on her. And I remember looking away and I saw somebody else walking towards me and they looked really staticky. Like they looked like back in the days when the TV wasn't getting reception, it had that gray fuzz all over it. And it was almost, there was like this layer of gray fuzz in front of this other person. And that was the contrast of somebody who was very blocked next to somebody who was very open. And it was like, I saw it in that moment. And from that point on, I was able to see it pretty much all the time. But I just needed two people standing next to each other with such opposing energies for me to see it. Because otherwise, if you're not paying attention, it's all blended together. But once I awoke into that, I could see it. And then I could see it in everybody. And then it went beyond just being gray and light. It became colors and textures and area specific, like certain colors and congestions on people's energy field, depending on what was going on in their physical body, or if they had, energies attached to them, or where they were at in their spiritual development. But this was years and years and years of me sort of deciphering what it was that I was seeing. But it definitely started out with, I would say, luminosity, and then it went into color, and then texture, and then from there, just like full blown like information.
Wow. So now you can go up to someone and kind of read their energy field. You can read just based on whatever experience is showing up for you, whatever texture or color or feeling is coming through for that person.
Yeah, I don't do it purposefully, and I try to keep that turned off. So that was the next level for me, which took me a long time, was learning how to control when I could have that on and when I could turn it off. That was life-changing in itself, because I was very, very open, and I didn't always have control. Sometimes I would see it all the time. Sometimes it would be like neutral all the time. And sometimes I would see stuff that I really wished I didn't want to see, and with practice, I learned how to turn it on and off according to my needs and wants. But in general, I keep it off unless it's appropriate, like we're having a session or I need to see deeper into something for my own well-being. Then I'll open it up. But other than that, I tend to go through my day fairly normal. I'm not walking around seeing everybody's, big story shining out at me.
That would be really exhausting and draining if you were taking in all that energy from everybody else all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting that you can turn it off. I guess that's, like you said, I guess that's a skill that you developed over time.
I'll say it like this. I can tone it down.
Okay.
Some stuff comes through, people are generally either very bright or very dark or somewhere in between. And those that are very bright or very dark are always going to stand out to me. Everybody else who's in that sort of neutral middle space is, they get kind of lost vibrationally for me. Like it doesn't really mean anything, but those that are like really elevated and really clear, I mean, wow, you can't not see it. And it's the same with those who are very burdened by energy. It's something you can't ignore sometimes when you're looking around.
And you mentioned attachments, and I know you've spoken about this on your podcast, entity attachment. Can you go into that? What is when entities are attached to someone's aura, their auric field? What is that? One, how does that show up for you? How do they get there? And how would you clear something like that?
That is a big question. Entity attachments. Well, in general, I would categorize any entity attachment as a lower vibrational energy, because any high vibrational spirit or being would not violate your boundary or be attached in your field in an inappropriate way whatsoever. They always, even your spirit guides, angels, loved ones who've crossed over, anybody who's like on the good side of your best interest, keep a respectful distance and only interfere, if you will, if it's appropriate, if it's allowed, and invited. So entity attachments are lower vibrational, conscious entities, energies of all kinds, okay, from very simplistic, elemental, tricky energies, like pure mischief, pure, bad luck, pure pain. It could be just a simple energy to something very complex that has thoughts and ideas and intentions that can get very strong and very powerful. And we might categorize that as demons, for a lack of a better way of describing that. And then there are earthbound spirits as well, like people who have left their physical bodies and that they're stuck in the astral and they're holding on and they're clinging. And sometimes they'll attach themselves to people that they knew in life or people that they're attracted to that are still living, just because there's something to be gained from the relationship. And there's infinite reasons why. There's no two are alike, no two reasons or attachments. And they look like, it's funny to me because it seems so obvious. Like, well, it's very obvious what they look like. But I realize not everybody can see it. Some of them look like blobs of energy that don't really have form, to having like faces and figures that might be distorted and deformed, to having full on like gremlin, demon like, imagery that you would see as any artist would render, and to just people, different people like you would look out on the street. And yeah, there's lots of different forms and variations as to how that will appear. And the reason that it happens is because a lot of people are unaware of their energetic field, and they might have weak spots in their aura. As we were speaking, our aura is this energy that extends all around us. And if you think of it as sort of like a sphere or a shell that holds our energy in and keeps energy out that we don't want, if we have weak spots in our energy field, entities can attach to us in those weak spots, and then they wreak havoc on our systems, and it causes problems depending on when they're attached to. They can be attached in areas that will create pain and discomfort, and will sort of destroy specific areas of your life. And sometimes, yeah, there's so many infinite reasons why we would see. And how do we clear them? Well, we are constantly clearing them, whether or not we are fully aware of them, especially those lower, I want to say weaker type, like we might pick up a little something from somebody, and where we go out into the ocean and have a swim and have a good time with our friends, and maybe we go to a little healing ceremony or get some energy work done, and without even realizing it, we're clearing things, we're picking up things, we're clearing things, if our energy is not strong. So just because you pick up something doesn't mean you need like a shaman or a healer to clear it from you. But sometimes those attachments are very locked in, very hooked in, and that takes a little bit more effort, which you might need outside help to get something like that off. But ultimately, you are the gatekeeper. Whoever is the host, whoever is the one that's holding the entity, is ultimately the one who gets to decide whether or not it stays or goes. And to be fair, sometimes we need help. But a lot of the times I think that you can remove anything, and I don't care how strong it is. I don't care how ugly, how horrible, whatever it is. Everyone needs to know that they are the strongest one in the situation, and that they can be rid of it. But it's very hard to believe that you're the strong one when you're under the oppression of an entity that has, a lot of, that creates a lot of trouble for you, and it brings your energy down, and you feel oppressed, and you feel depressed, and you feel powerless. And so it's very hard to muster up the strength to believe in yourself, to be rid of something. And that's why we might need outside help. But if you know that and you have faith in yourself and your light and your guide systems, you can remove anything instantly. But just the intention of holding that I don't want anything in my field, it's not allowed, and you hold that firmly and you trust that, and that will be the thing that gets rid of it. So it's actually kind of simple.
I can see that. I mean, the power of intention is so strong. So I can imagine, like for me, if I feel any like darkness of any kind or dark entities that might be in my field, I just envision a white light like coming into my crown chakra and just filling me up and expanding outward.
Lovely.
And that usually like gets rid of
Yes.
anything in my field. And sometimes they kind of hang out for a little bit, but then just eventually go away because I just kind of keep that light with me. Is it as simple as doing something like that?
Yeah, and that might be something a little bit different, because not all entities or lower level entities are necessarily attached into your energy field. So that might be one that you're feeling in your vicinity that is kind of lurking a little bit close, and you're sensing it. And so you want to make some space for yourself. So you do that. And certainly that definitely helps. Preventative measures, that's the way to go. Yeah, it can be that simple, but sometimes it's very deep, and it can be very difficult. So I don't want to downplay like, oh, it's all easy peasy and everybody can get rid of any entity. Some of them are really attached to some deep trauma, some deep wounding. And there's some very necessary healing that's needed in order to be able to move through those kind of attachments. And sometimes we remove and they come back, and we remove and they come back. Old habits, old relationships, it's just like breaking up with somebody. Sometimes we break up and get back together until we finally learn our lesson, and it all serves a purpose. It's not meant to be a punishment. You're meant to learn something through those experiences. But I would say that's kind of my forte. It's kind of my specialty, is being able to see and guide people through those types of things. Although it's the thing that I like to do least. I'd rather not have to tell anybody about entities, attachments of any sort, because it's an uncomfortable topic and it makes people uncomfortable. And I don't want to ever scare anybody, but that's certainly a big part of the work that I do.
That can be terrifying if someone's like, oh, I've got an entity attached to me. Great. I can't see it and it's there. Yeah, I can see how that might be shocking to somebody that has to walk through the world with an entity. I mean, how would you even know, even if you're not because there's so many people that aren't even connected to this whole world, this spirituality, or even aware that there might be an entity attached, but maybe they're drained energetically every day, or like you said, depressed and they don't know why. So that could be a possibility.
Well, I will break it down in a couple categories here. Like, I would say 90% of the time, if I tell somebody that they have an entity, they knew it. They're like, I knew it. I've been having these experiences. It's somewhat obvious on a level, like especially if they're very tricky ones. There's, to me, no way you wouldn't know. You're just convincing yourself every day that it's not happening, or you have a hint, but you think you're going crazy. It's like one of those type of things. And so when I'm, as an outside viewer, looking in on somebody and telling them this, they're like, oh, I knew it. They feel so relieved in a way because they knew it, but they just needed to accept that that's what was happening so they could work through it, right? And then the other category would be people who don't know and don't have awareness, but what I'm telling them as far as like, this is the type of thing here, and this is specifically what it's causing, then suddenly it makes sense. And then it empowers them, because now they don't feel helpless. Now they don't feel like it's them. It's something outside of them. It's not you. You're not the one running the crazy negative thoughts in your head. That's something else that's chattering at you. All you have to do is move that off, and you're going to find that you can get through a day without talking negatively to yourself, or hearing or seeing or perceiving this negativity in your life as you are, because people think it's them, but oftentimes, almost every time, it's not.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It's so fascinating. So fascinating.
It goes deep, man. And I don't know how to, the further I get into it, I find that there's consciousness in everything. I recently just had a experience with a chronic shoulder pain issue that I have, that I speak about often. And I've gone through so many layers of healing, past lives, emotions, traumas, you name it. I've been to psychologists, psychotherapists, body workers, psychics, shamans. I have dealt with this pain on so many levels. And one of the most recent things that I discovered was an entity of pain itself inside my shoulder. It was an entity that I had to peel back years and years of all these layers. And every time I'm like, I'm trying to get to the root. What's the seed of this thing? I've moved and I've moved and I've cleared and I've healed. And then finally I found it. And it was this entity. And the entity's pure purpose was to create discomfort and pain. That's it. There was no other agenda other than to like mess with my field in order for me to suffer, and so I removed it, and I got to tell you, my shoulders felt really amazing. It's not 100%, but there's something different, like that little thorn that had always been in there that would cause the pain to flare up again. Doesn't feel like it's there. So I still have some journeying to do with the healing of my shoulder, but the shoulder is teaching me so much about the healing process. By going through this with my own shoulder, I'm learning how to heal other people with between the physical and spiritual, and how that's related and what it comes down to. But yeah, pain itself is an entity just in itself, and color is its own entity. Like, everything can have consciousness. It depends on what layer of it you want to be looking into. And you can communicate with that consciousness and reason with that consciousness in order to alleviate symptoms or discomforts that you might be feeling. But, you know, I don't know why I see things like that. It's just, but it helps. It works. It works.
What about like trauma, childhood trauma? Can the trauma and the story of the trauma, whether it's childhood or ancestral trauma, create form on some level in your body as an entity? Just like, can it snowball into an entity? Can trauma do that, or is that different? Is trauma completely separate from entities?
Trauma, I would say, is the gateway for an entity attachment. Like I said, it's, case study. We could just go through so many different reasons, but like a good, a general idea of how that might work is you are your own whole being and you go through some sort of trauma. Let's just say it's a car accident. Mm. It's physical trauma, right? Maybe you lost a limb and the PTSD of going through that. And so your whole aura gets rattled and then it becomes weak. And literally the physical severing of like one of your limbs now becomes this hole in your energy field. And then the fear of ever getting in a car or being on the road debilitates you and shrinks your energy down. And so now you have this giant hole, this weak spot in your energy field. And if there's an entity that likes to feed off of that fear, and they know that they can poke at your anxieties around driving and being in cars or around cars, they are going to use that to their advantage and latch into your field. And then they amplify your fear. And so then it becomes this totally debilitating thing where you can't even leave or go anywhere. And that's when it gets really bad, and that's how entities happen. So even childhood trauma, let's abuse, that's under the same idea of your energy being violated or broken. But with that, oftentimes comes the entities from the perpetrators that are creating the abuse. So if somebody is being physically abused and the abuser has an entity that makes them violent, eventually that entity can pass on, or aspects of that entity can pass on to the victim. And so that's why a lot of times victims also become abusers. But then it can also go really deep, where it's beyond just this lifetime. It might be entities that you have relationships with from other lifetimes that are unresolved from behaviors you had that are so far away from you. And these entities are so deeply, deeply buried in the energy field, and they rear their ugly head at the opportune time for you, not as a punishment, not necessarily as karma, but at a time where it might be ripe for you to face that and work through it and heal it. So, I mean, there's so many ways in which this can happen, but yeah.
I actually also wanted to talk to you about ETs and spirit, and ETs versus spirit and angels. Mm-hmm. When I think of extraterrestrial, I think of the gray alien with the big eyes, right? And then when I think of spirit, I think of like interdimensional angels. And then you think, okay, the Bible had angels, but were those ETs? And is there a difference between ETs? Are ETs and angels the same thing? Are they spirits? Like, can you help me understand the difference between extraterrestrials, spirits, angels, all of that?
I will attempt to.
Okay.
Based on what I've seen. ETs, and many of them are interdimensional beings, much like angels or deities or spirit guides or dead people, spirits. Mm-hmm. They're interdimensional. It just means that they're running at a different vibrational frequency that is unseen to the human eye. Like there's this whole astral realm and then beyond, where all these other spirits that are vibrating on a different level. And so they seem invisible from our physical dimension. But there's many layers. Think of it as like a tall building with many floors. And some of them are on the 4th floor, 5th floor, 10th floor, 11th floor. But you kind of have to be on the same floor as one who is vibrating at that level in order to perceive them and connect with them. So when we meditate, for example, and we want to connect with angels or pray to angels, when we close our eyes and we invoke that, we're raising our frequency to connect to the consciousness of these higher vibrational angelic energies to say our prayers or receive energy from. And it's the same with certain ETs. Some of them are very high floors, some of them are lower floors. Some of them are so close to our floor that sometimes they can be in our floor. And that's why people have experiences and why they'll see beings of in a physical sense, because they can bend their frequency enough to be in the same space as us. Now, I am not certain if all ETs can do that, but I kind of assume so because their consciousness is much more evolved than ours. They're highly intelligent. They're way more tapped into their telepathy and their power of suggestion, I want to say, where they can bend the frequencies enough to make it so you can't see them or see them, and maybe even manipulate your energy. So, they can move you around in this third dimensional space with a little bit more ease than what would be the confines of like what our physical rules say. Like you can't walk through walls, or you can't float, or you can't, but people have experiences all the time where they're taken through walls and taken up in ships and all of these things. So there's a lot of communications happening on higher frequency levels, and it can change literally the physical makeup of them and us, and that's ETs. So it's the same interdimensionally, but depending on what floor we're on, changes like the intention and the purpose of these beings. Angels or higher dimensional beings, they're not as attached to the human story, whereas like beings that are right outside our dimension, they care. They're more involved with this physical dimension. And the higher you get, the less invested you are in what it is to be in the physical dimension. And it just becomes sort of this like just presence of love, unconditionally, always giving, pure light. They're not caught up in the story. They don't care if you're a monster. They don't care if you're a saint. You're all the same because they love unconditionally. But when we get closer into this third dimensional space where some of those ETs reside, they have more like, oh, what's happening here? How is humanity doing? Like, what's the weather like? Is this land good, or not? And what are the frequencies of these different ley lines and portals? And, there's all these different things that they get invested in the closer they get to our frequency. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but they're similar in that they are interdimensional. All of them are interdimensional outside of this dimension.
I guess that angels and spirit guides exist on a higher plane, a higher dimension, right? So I guess closer to source consciousness.
Closer to source, yeah. And some of the very high angels, as I see it, are like as close to source as source is. Like there's source, and then like whatever the first step out of source would be these very high angels. They're pure energy, pure miracle, pure love. They're so intense. And then when it moves down, it's not that they're worse. They just take on, like, I want to say, like, they invest a little bit more of their consciousness into what's happening in the lower realms, and our spirit guides, when we cross over into the light, we raise our frequency very high and we come into a state of love. And then there are some interdimensional beings, like, let's think about like a ghost, for example, a haunt, that somebody's like moving things around and causing mischief inside your house. That's an interdimensional being that we can't see, but their intention is much lower. Their consciousness is much lower, and and what they're doing is, not as high or as clear, or as, meant for a greater good.
We talked about my experience. I know you watched my very first video that I made about my mystical experience with the light growing, and it was so it was so pure and so divine and so real. It felt angelic. It felt like God. I don't know what that was. It was just it was as close to love as I've ever felt. Like this unconditional love just bathed every cell in my body, and it was so beautiful. And what was that? I mean, do you have any insight as to what that was? Was that God? Was that like spirit? Was that a spirit guide? Was that an angel? Well, it doesn't really matter. I'm trying to put a label on it because I'm human, and I'm trying to still trying to understand what that was. But it was like,
I mean,
so amazing.
It's all God. Even the bad stuff is God, an
Mm-hmm.
expression of God,
Right.
trying to show you and teach you something. And you're right. Does it matter, like whether it was a god or an angel? But sometimes from this dimension, even somebody with just such a good, pure intention can feel like God because it's so good and so clean and so
Yeah.
devoid of anything of shadow. But God is so magnificent. I don't even know if we could really experience God in its fullest expression. It would be too massive for our feeble little selves to be able to handle. But certainly, yeah, it was God and it was everything under God, that I would say. But I love it that that light came into you and nourished you, because it will change your life forever when you feel that and experience that and know that. So
It
I'm happy for you.
has.
Hmm.
Thank you. It has changed. It's already like I feel it, and it's like created, it's like blown me wide open. It's like, and now I have this awareness all of the time. And like I feel now communication with spirit on a
Hmm.
daily basis. And it's so clear now. I'm still like, feel like I'm learning a new language and learning how to communicate, but it was so amazing. And like you said, at a certain point in my experience, it was like too much for my physical senses to hold. I couldn't anymore. I couldn't hold, my body couldn't deal with it. And as soon
Right.
as I got to that point, the light started to recede back into the flame, and then it was gone. And
Uh,
it was like just so much grace.
Yeah, exactly. It's like grace and mercy, and it's this quality of knowing that there's a consciousness outside of you that loves all of you, every
Hmm.
cell of your being, and to feel that and to feel so worthy and so humbled at the same time, like, you know. And I get it, because when you're in those moments, you never want to leave, but it's almost too much to be in all. It's so
Hmm.
intense, but so good and so healing. And I'm really happy for you that you got to experience that. And everybody can experience that. Everybody can access that.
Yep.
It's on the table for everyone. It's just a matter if they want to search for it and look for it. And all you have to do is want it, and it will open for you in divine timing. You just have to sort of have some deeper call or desire to look for something beyond yourself.
It's so true. After I had that experience and I was just sitting with myself, that's what they kept telling me is, this is for everybody. This is for everybody. This
Hmm.
is like humbling me, like,
Yep.
you're not special.
Yeah.
You're special, but you're not special
Yeah, totally.
because you had this experience. And like, this is for everybody. It was almost
Hmm.
just like they, like there was this amazing party going on, and they
Hmm.
lifted the curtain and they're like,
Hmm.
this is where all you guys are going. And
Yeah.
then they like closed the curtain, that's what it felt like. I'm like, what the fuck? This is
and
so,
and you
what?
just want to go tell everybody. You think like, you guys,
Yes.
this thing, it's here. Like, and you just know, oh, if everybody just knew, everything would be
Yeah.
fine. But then you get back in here and you're like, oh, everybody's so distracted and occupied by all the things. And even myself, I know that, but like I get so caught up in the stories and so caught up in
Oh my God.
whatever. And you have to do the work to put in, to stop yourself and like check in. And yeah, but the way, when I heard your story, it was so good. I believe it was your first episode of your podcast series, right?
Yep.
For people who might be listening and want to listen to it. When I heard it, I was like, oh, it sounds just like a clip from my own movie. Like, I've been there similarly. And it felt exactly the way that you described it, but within my own story in my own way. And I know when that illumination and that awakening happens, that it will change. It's like a total rebirth. It's like you will never be the same person you were after that moment moving forward. Your whole perspective of everything changes after that. You become integrated with the light. The codes of that light have been put inside you. They're there forever. You will never be able to unsee what you saw.
It's true. Someone the other day, they were like, I can't believe you were able to recall that experience so clearly. And I'm like, how could I not? Like, it's in my DNA now. Like it was, it, yeah, it's become a part of me. It's wild. But but yeah, I think that's why I resonate with you and your podcast so much and your stories is because when you explain things, I'm like, I'm there with you. I'm right there with you.
People say that all the time, and the irony is I actually have a really terrible memory. My husband picks on me all the time. Like, I don't remember trivial earthly things, but when it comes to whatever
Same.
happens, yeah, in the ethers, I can recall it with such detail, and I want to carry you on that journey with me. I want you to know in every moment what was happening, what was the process, what did that feel like, and I've always been like that. And but when it comes to the earthly stuff, forget about it. I couldn't tell you what I ate for lunch yesterday. Like,
Same.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I don't know. Maybe it's because we're just kind of living up here. But it's so funny. But let's stay on this topic because you have a couple of very incredible stories that I really love when you share. And one is your story when you went to Peru. You had a really profound experience there. And
which one? I don't even think I told all the profound stories that happened there. There was the most profound thing that happened. I didn't ever even shared it, because it was so powerful and so personal in a way. But yeah, I had many profound experiences in Peru.
I want you to share whatever comes to you right now that you feel called to share, where you also received validation afterwards, because there were a couple of those shares that you came back and you're like, holy shit.
Okay, well, I mean, I think probably the most interesting, okay, I'll share this one because it was so, even for me, I was like, this is absurd. This is crazy. Okay. So we were in Peru, and we had been contacted by a tour guide who would do these off the beaten path, like what other tourists aren't seeing, ancient sites of Peru that nobody gets to go to. And we were like, yeah, we're on board. Let's do it. So we take this tour bus. We go to the middle of nowhere. There's these huge mountains just like jutting out of nowhere. And we stop in the middle of all these mountains and there's nothing there. Like on any given day, if you were driving down there, you would be like, there's no reason to stop here. It was nowhere. She's like, okay, now we're going to hike up this mountain, and I'm like, oh, geez. And it's like a steep incline and we're going up, and you get up a little ways and you start seeing these like primitive walls. Just looks like, human beings that stack stones into these walls, into these walkways. And we're trying to climb up that area. And as I'm walking up there, I get approached by a spirit. It was this old Incan woman, this kind of primitive old Incan woman. And she's following me and she's saying, hey, this is my home. She's like, my grandparents found this place as I was walking up. I don't know what we're walking up to. She's telling me a little bit about how they perceived these mountains to be like relatives, like siblings to them. And then we come up to this area and you can see that there was maybe this building, this old primitive stone building. And you could see it's like a hut that somebody lived in. And then we go up to this other area. And then at the top, like hidden, you cannot see it from the road, was this cave. And it was a huge, perfect triangle. It was like one rock, massive slab this way, one massive slab that way. And in front of that cave was a monolith, a dark black stone that was carved, but the top had been broken off. The top was missing. And then carved inside the wall next to this triangular cave was looked like a door, like a square. A smooth rock that was out of place. And then the actual triangle cave had been stacked with little rocks about halfway. And so the top half of it was open so you could look in there, and you looked in there and it was all just rubble. It didn't actually go back anywhere. It looked like it had like caved in a way. And so this woman brought us up there, and I'm speaking to this Incan woman. I'm not telling my friends what's going on because stuff like this happens to me all the time. And I question everything, even when I'm going through the experience. But I was sitting against the dark black stone that looked carved, that the top was broken off. And I was leaning up against it, and I was staring at the triangle cave, and I was meditating. And then I saw something peek out of the triangle cave and look at me. And I looked at it and I saw what looked like a lizard person, like it looked like if you took snake DNA and mixed it with a human being, and it was like a reptilian looking human. And I saw it and I was like, I didn't just see that. I was like, I didn't see that. And it kind of peeked out and then peeked back. And then a few minutes later, it peeked out again. And I was like, oh my God, I just saw it again. And that Incan woman was still with me. And she said to me, she said, what you just saw, when we lived here, when my family was here, those beings would come out of this cave, and it frightened us. They didn't hurt us, but they spooked us out, basically. And so we did a ritual, and I saw, like, I could see these like screens of images moving in front of me. And she said, we did a ritual and we covered the whole hole under this ritual with these rocks to seal it up so these beings couldn't come out and frighten us. And I don't think that they were malicious. They were just odd. I mean, if you saw a reptilian being kind of slithering out of a cave, I'm sure you would be like, like, we're good, right?
It's terrifying.
And it was terrifying, right? So she tells me this. And then this other Incan spirit who had been following me around for the duration of my trip to Peru, and I want to call him an advanced Incan. And okay, I'm telling this is such a crazy story, you guys, and I apologize to anybody from Peru because I don't want to claim that I know how your culture works or your history works. I'm just sharing what I experienced, you know. And so there was this advanced Incan that had been popping into my fields every once in a while. I met this advanced Incan at another site called Saxe Woman, which was one of these like places that was acres deep of those stones that look like they're razor cut and squashed together. And you're looking at it and you're like, and there's stones as big as a house and cars just squashed together. You can't even stick a piece of paper in between the cracks. And you're looking at this like, who did this? How did this even happen? And so backstory, I'm going to cut out of this story. I'll come back to it. But I was at Saxe Woman and I was meditating and I was like, what is this? And this advanced Incan, it was an Incan spirit that felt very elevated, very telepathic, really attuned to their gift, very centered, almost like a shamanic, but even more than that, being showed up. And he told me that human beings made those rocks, but they were given gifts by these ETs. There were these other, what looked like taller gray beings in ships that came to Peru, and that they had left some of the original megaliths and structures there. And they had these very advanced technologies, which were consciousness technologies with other technologies. And they were making these structures. And then they found the primitive Incans that were there, and they recruited some of them and somehow upgraded them. They somehow taught them or downloaded them or upgraded them, and then made a group of advanced Incans that they passed this knowledge on to. And so these advanced Incans, the group of the advanced Incans, were the ones that used this sound technology. And so I saw it was sort of like meditation with vibrational sounds and intention. It was a telekinetic, telepathic with sound, like mantras and chanting, that they would invoke to these stones and be able to lift them, and they would become light like air, and they become malleable, and they were able to create these structures. And I saw that, one person could do one small stone, and maybe for a larger piece, maybe a few of them would have to get together and do these kind of like resonance chants. I know this sounds so crazy, but this is what I saw. And so I was like, okay, this is how they did it. These advanced Incans that got these gifts made these rocks, right? And so now jump back, I'm at that triangle cave. And so this advanced Incan shows up, and he says to me, so back in the day when we were doing our sound technology with our group and we were making these structures, these beings, these lizard people could feel the vibrations. They could hear what was happening, or what, it was like I could get the sense they felt, oh, what's happening on the surface. So they would come out of this network of caves and systems that were under the mountains. And I saw them come out. I saw the whole thing play out like a movie. And I see them kind of hiding behind the bushes, like observing the advanced Incans doing these sound chants. And then the advanced Incans like looking over and seeing them. And they were kind of far away from each other at first. And then they kind of got closer until they actually had like a face-to-face meeting and realized that they were all good. And then the advanced Incans were invited by these lizard people to come in to their underground city that existed under the mountains. And there was these networks and this whole community of these lizard people that lived under the mountains. And so this advanced Incan told me that this triangle cave was one of the main entrances to their world. And so it had been marked by that doorway, so others would know that this was a portal or a doorway in, and that megalith that I was sitting at that was blown off on the top was sort of the code or the story of like what it was. Like there was information that you could get out of that would tell you, perhaps, I don't know, but it was almost like the if you knew how to receive the dialogue from that megalith, it would say, this is the entrance to these lizard people's city underneath there. It had information encoded in it somehow. And this is what they told me. And I was sitting there in silence while, all my other friends were having their meditations and doing their thing. I'm having these conversations. I was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. And I think I'm crazy right now. I think I'm cuckoo. Like this is so, I don't even know, right? And so I reluctantly said, okay, you guys, I was up there with, I don't know, four other people and the tour guide who I didn't know. And I was like, look, I don't know. I got to tell you what just happened. I'm having visitations. They're telling me this whole story. And the Peruvian woman who brought us up there, after I told her that whole story, she's like, she seemed a little stunned, and she's like, that rock that you're sitting on right now, she said back in the 40s, the treasure hunters found that spot that was discovered maybe in the earlier 1900s, and they had dynamited it, thinking that there might be gold underneath the rock, and they blew the top of it off, and the top of it actually had a snake carved in on it. And so I had been sitting there saying like, oh, they're like snake people in here, and the primitive Incan woman told me that used to be covered with rocks. She's the one who told me that, and when modern man came, they thought there might be treasure in there. And she said they started to take down the rocks to get in there to see what was in there. And that's why it was only half full. So anyways, I'm like, okay, this is like about the weirdest thing I've ever seen, and I don't know. And so I let it go. And then I get back home a few weeks later, and I was working on some art, and I just wanted something in the background. And I thought, oh, Ancient Aliens, I love that show. So I was like, oh, I wonder if there's any shows I haven't seen. And sure enough, there was this whole new season that I hadn't watched. And I think it was, I can't remember, but it might have been season 14, episode 8, but I could be wrong. But either way, I was rolling through all of the episodes, and this episode came on, and they're like, we're going to Peru, and they're showing all these like sweeping shots of all the places I had just been. And I was like, yeah, it's like, this is so cool. I'm so excited to see what they say about Peru. And I was stunned because they're like, ancient astronaut theorists believe that there is a network of underground cities and caves with lizard people who have built these megalithic structures. And you should have seen me. I was jumping up and down. I was like, no, oh my God. I was like, no, it wasn't the lizard people. It was the advanced Incans. And like even the guys on the show, they went up to this like little hole. It must have been like 3 feet big. And there was like a tiny little snake like carved in the rock above it. And they were like, we believe that this is one of the entrances into the underground network. And I was like, no, I know where the Capitol entrance is. It's huge and it's hidden up in this mountain. You would drive right by it and never know that it was there. You would have to climb up it to even be able to see that this little village or whatever was there even existed. And so for me, that was massively validating because I literally thought, like, this is no way, like lizard people living underground. I live in Hawaii and they talk about the mo'o here, which are these lizard people. And I've heard stories from the local people, but I've been here for years and I've never seen one myself, and until I actually experience my own encounter, I'm not disbelieving it. I haven't had my own tangible contact, So when I saw this in Peru, I certainly thought about the mo'o stories here, but I still had a hard time believing until I watched the Ancient Aliens episode. And I mean, I can't make that up. That's what happened.
No, that's wild, Judea. That's so crazy. Like, I mean, I wish I could have an experience like that. So when you saw the lizard person in Peru,
they weren't little. They were normal size. Just so you know, they were like human size. They were
human
big.
size. They were big. You saw it not with. Did you see it with your clairvoyance, or did? Oh, wow.
Interdimensional. But see, the thing is with me is sometimes the interdimensional vision is very clear, that it looks solid, but I know that it's not. I try to explain it to people. It's like if you held an image in front of one of your eyes and, like you can kind of see one image and then you can see the physical world. That's what it will look like to me. And they become superimposed on top of each other. So I have spatial awareness as to where these things are within the physical space. And sometimes if this energy is very strong, or depending on the atmosphere, I had just gotten out of 2 weeks of plant medicine ceremonies. I wasn't on anything, but I had just done a lot of work. I was very clear. I was eating really clean for like over a month at this point, and hiking in the air. And, it was all these things. So it was just ripe for me to see it. And I saw it with clarity. I saw the texture of the skin. I saw the color of the skin. I saw how tall it was, its eyes, the way it moved. I mean, I saw the whole thing. Nobody else could see it, but I wasn't confused that nobody else could see it. It was still an awareness that it was an interdimensional energy that I was looking at.
So cool. Such a mystery.
But,
this planet is so mysterious.
It is. But what really excited me about that was if the lizard thing was true. Okay, if there was a realm of possibility that lizard people lived in the mountains in Peru, then that means maybe this sound technology that I saw them making the stones with was true. Because that was also another piece that I was like, oh my gosh, am I crazy? Like, who am I to think that I know that aliens came down and tinkered with the humans and gave them this knowledge? I don't know. I saw that. That's what I picked up. And I might think I'm crazy for the rest of my life, except I saw that the ancient people, or the shamans and such, the medicine people of Peru also perceive these lizard people. So perhaps if that came in with clarity, maybe the way these structures have been built does have something to do with sound technology. And since that time, that was a few years ago, I have actually saw other speakers talk about this, about that maybe some of these ancient structures were built with some sort of sound technology. So
I was going to say that too. Matthias de Stefano, I don't know if you know who he is.
Yes, I've heard of him.
Yeah, he's also mentioned the same thing. It's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, why not? How else did they move,
I don't know.
Big stones, the Great Pyramid of Giza. Like, it's wild.
I can't wait. I want to go to Egypt actually really, really bad and get my downloads there and see, because those structures are a little bit different and I've actually been to Egypt, but I was too young to really see it with open eyes. I would love to go there and see what kind of downloads I get with those structures. And yeah, that's a mysterious world.
Yeah, I'm curious too. Yeah, I can't wait for that episode. For those of you watching, you have to watch this or listen to the Spirit Speakers podcast because Judea is full of these stories and they're so good.
Yeah, I'm actually going to Nepal in October. I'm going to be taking a group, and that's going to be open for applications for anybody who's listening who might want to come to Nepal with me. But apparently, there's these caves there, which is so interesting. I just got to tell you because I was having these dreams like 2 years ago where I was walking down these mountain towns in the Himalayas, and I'd be looking at the Himalayas, and there would be this cave in the side of the mountain, and I would go into the cave, and there would be like this temple inside there, and there'd be these like deities and statues and all these things. And I'd be like, whoa, so mystified. And then I would wake up. And I had this dream multiple times, 5 or more times in the course of the year. And the dream had nothing else happening except for walking, going into this cave in the mountain. And so I paid attention. I was like, maybe I'm supposed to go to the Himalayas. I don't know. And later that year, I had done a retreat in California, and this woman came up to me and she's like, every time I think about you, I think about this place that's very powerful that you need to go see. It's in the Himalayas. It's like this cave in the side of the mountain, and it's a temple. And I didn't even know that that was a thing in the Himalayas. I didn't know there was caves with temples inside it. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, like, can you bring me? And she was like, of course. And so anyways, now we've organized a whole trip, and I'm going to bring a whole group with me to Nepal, and we're going to go to these caves. And apparently these caves are where some of the deities that we know in the Buddhist, lineage, like the Taras, behind me, achieved their light bodies, achieved these massive downloads and enlightenment in these caves.
Whoa.
So I'm just like, I can't even believe that I'm going. It's already set. It's going to happen October, and I'm actually going to go into these caves that I dreamed about 2 years ago that landed in my lap by this woman who's like, you got to go to these caves. So there will be an episode in the future about Nepal. I'm sure there's going to be something, I don't have a high expectation, but I expect that I'm being called there for something. And perhaps there's some sort of like information or download that I'll get in those spaces. And I'm excited to share that with people after that's transpired. So
I'm so stoked for you. Super
Thank you.
stoked. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to shift gears really quick and ask a question. A friend of mine brought up a really good question yesterday. A lot of near-death experiencers and a lot of people in the spiritual community will say that we choose our challenges, we choose our circumstances before we incarnate into these bodies for the expansion of our soul. So, for example, our soul might be like, I want to experience life in poverty. What's it like to be poor and have all these hardships? And then we incarnate. Then we incarnate into this life, and we're having a really, really hard time. We're struggling. We're poor. We can't feed ourselves or our family. And then you are exposed to these spiritual principles and the law of attraction, and I can manifest a better life, and I can put food on my table and get a better job. And let's say you start putting things into your vortex using the words of Abraham, and you start taking action to manifest and to bring a career and ways to make money into your life. Is that person in the human form just doomed to a life of being poor because they've already decided that their soul's decided that you're going to be poor and they have no choice? Because we have free will, is my understanding. But if we're making a choice beforehand as a soul when we come into this body, is that free will? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what wins, the law of attraction or your soul contract before you come into the body?
Well, your plan was to awaken out of it. It's all happening exactly as it's supposed to. So you were deciding before you came to suffer and feel totally lost and oppressed and severed from everything, to stumbling into your enlightenment and discovering everything. And that was part of it. That's the story. That was what was supposed to happen. And those who don't, that was their story. They weren't supposed to. And isn't it beautiful though? Like, what an adventure to go from like the worst type of reality to the best type of reality. And I pray for those that don't get there. But that's their story and that is their choice. They weren't meant to. You can't force it upon somebody. They have something to learn. There's something massive that would happen for somebody who lived a whole life of suffering, been relieved of their physical vessel, and then all that comes to them in that awareness in that moment is the miracle for them. And some people are fortunate enough to discover that while they're still in the body. But either way, you're still going to learn, you're still going to grow, you're still going to get everything that you needed out of it, whether you figure it out when you're 20 or when you're dead. It doesn't matter. You're still going to get everything you're supposed to. And it's all divinely chosen. It's all perfect.
And what would you say to someone right now who is suffering with whatever they're carrying, whatever burden they're carrying, and they just feel like they're stuck in a certain place and they can't get out of it, and then they hear like, "Oh, I chose this." I mean, that sucks to hear, right? Like if you're in that space and maybe you're watching this podcast and you're like, "Fuck you guys." Like
100. I was there. Trust me. Like when I got that awareness, I wouldn't choose this. Are you kidding me? Like that is the load of crap, but the further in I get, that is the truth. And, or at least that's the truth as I know. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything you don't want to hear. You're welcome to not believe that. But when you can accept that you are responsible for everything that you've experienced, there is unbelievable healing that's available for you. Because for me, I understand that a lot of the suffering and punishment I've put myself through, if you will, it's like, why would I choose this? Why would I punish myself in this way? It's because there are things that I did in other lifetimes that I felt so tremendously guilty and shameful for that I could not forgive myself for. And in the act of having to forgive others that are doing the same to me in this lifetime, I am in fact forgiving myself. And that's very hard to do. It's very hard to get to that. But if you can forgive somebody who is inflicting pain or on you, an outside source, you are actually forgiving something in yourself that you haven't been able to let go of or clear. And that's why that is reflecting to you in your reality. But the joke is that we are stripped of all memory. So we don't remember that we were that jerk way back when, and we hurt all these people and we did all these things, and so we feel so victimized. We feel like this thing is being put on us and we get defensive and we get, we're what do you say, unaccountable, right? Because we don't have the ability to see. But I happen to be one of those people who've been able to see into all my lifetimes, and I'm so humbled when I have spent wasted years being angry at everybody else around me for my misery, and then finding that memory in myself that, oh my God, I did this thing and I am so ashamed. And in fact, what I'm experiencing is not even match the misery that I caused. I'm getting out easy. In fact, every single time I felt like I suffered through anything, when in perspective of looking back to past life memories, it's like I realized I got the easy way out because some of the stuff I did was way worse. And it's very hard, especially in this current lifeline, if we're like a good, well-meaning person and we try really hard and we have all these good intentions, it's very hard for people to accept that maybe they weren't always perfect and maybe that they did some, choice things in other lifetimes. But oftentimes that's the case. And it's not karma in a way of punishment. It's in a way of you being able to look at something in yourself in a different way so you can heal it and so you can forgive it and forgive yourself. So just know that even your worst enemy, if you can forgive them, if you can find compassion for them, you're finding compassion for yourself. That took me like so many years and layers of work to get to that ultimate truth, but that is the ultimate truth. And it's very challenging for people who don't have the ability to see where they have contributed to creating the misery that they feel in their life. But there's also a way out of it. And a way out of it is to have awareness of liberation, because there's something encoded in us that we have convinced ourselves that we need to suffer in order to prove our worth, or we need to punish ourselves in order to learn our lesson. And so this idea has been fixated over this reality, and we are all self-punishing through these experiences. We are all just punishing ourselves. We give ourselves bodies that are challenging. We give ourselves relationships. We give ourselves scenarios and situations and conditions that are challenging because we feel like we are undeserving on a deeper level because of things we've done in other incarnations, or because of things we've not been able to forgive in ourselves, right? So there's a choice that can be made somewhere in all of this to love yourself wholly and unconditionally, and to feel worthy of love and blessings, and to get out of like that wheel of karma. And all you do is sort of like step out of this idea that we need to continually punish ourselves and suffer in order to feel worthy in the world. And I say that to you saying I don't have that all figured out 24/7 of the day either, but I come back to that. And that is some ultimate truth in all of this, is that a lot of the things that I struggle with, I realize on some higher level that I'm doing it to myself. And anyways, I don't know if that would bring any clarity to anybody who just heard that, because that is a very big, kind of idea as to how this reality works. But it's the truth that I know. It's the ultimate truth.
Yeah.
And yeah, we can choose to remove ourselves from suffering.
In the mornings when I sit by my altar, I ask spirit and my higher self, I'm like, ask that my lessons and my growth and my challenges come with ease and grace. Because we do grow. We grow from these challenges. We grow from adversity. But we don't have to. Like, we don't have to go through these hardships and go through these tough things to grow either. You can grow through love as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I set that intention in the mornings.
I love that. Yeah, there's just an easier way. I mean, it's going to be challenging. We're here to have the experience. We're in human bodies. We're limited. It's like a heavy meat suit, and it's sweaty, and it's,
dense.
it's like, yeah, it's dense. It's not fun. And then we're dealing with all these other people and their density and all, so I'm not trying to make it sound like we're just going to like float through it all and it's just going to be super easy. But when we integrate some of this wisdom into our lives, it makes navigating this a lot easier, and it makes moving through the challenges so much swifter. And you call in more magic and miracles in your life. Like, man, I mean, if I could share every moment that goes on in my life, yeah, there's a lot of frustration and bitchiness, and like, the people who know me, like, it's funny because people probably think, oh, you're probably so mystical all the time. Like, no, I'm very real. I get annoyed by traffic. I get frustrated when people don't do what they're supposed to do, and I can get, bitchy. It's just
You're
just
human.
the way I'm human. But I also have a lot of magic and miracles and synchronicity that is beyond. Like, it's so crazy. For as flawed as a human being as I am, it's incredible how much magic is in my life. And so, gosh, imagine if I really do achieve full enlightenment, light body, like what will happen? How beautiful could it be? So you don't have to be a perfect, flawless human to have miracles and blessings in your life. You just got to know how to move your way through this life experience with a little bit more awareness, a little bit more consciousness, a little bit more sensitivity. And so that's what I try to teach people.
Yep. And welcome the magic. Just welcome, be open to it. Gotta be open.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we close the night or close the evening?
What's the message here? The message is this. There's so much more happening behind the veil of this reality that is so profound and so big and so miraculous. And all you have to do is desire to want to connect with it and see it. And it will open up for you. It will open up for you. You just have to turn towards it. That's it. And that's when it starts. And there's no better time to start than now. And you're going to fumble, and you're going to hate the process sometimes and you're going to feel like a failure, but keep coming back to it. Don't give up. Like, there's so much magic and so much love and so much beauty, and I feel like one day collectively we're going to get to a point where these things that I perceive and see might be something that is just common knowledge, that we are all seeing and perceiving the world in the same way. And I feel like maybe I'm just somebody that's kind of guiding others, just dropping those hints of like, hey, if you pay attention to this or that, or look at the world in this way, and it helps lead them on. Like, somebody has to kind of drop the crumbs. And so uh, all I know is you could never convince me that that is not what is happening. And it's so glorious. And I just want everybody to know
Mm-hmm.
it and feel it. And it's real. Like, my testimony for you is like, people, it's real. It's so amazing. God is good, and you're
Mm-hmm.
loved, and just be with it. Like, accept it, embrace it, invite it, call it in. It's yours. You can have it. You just have to desire it. You just have to ask for it. You have to ask for it. So there you go. That's my message.
It's so true, and you're so right. And I say this all the time, magic is real. It's so real. I've seen it, I've touched it, I know it, I feel it, and it's all around us. We just have to tap into it and be open, and that's it.
It's the most empowering thing to remember who you truly are and where you came from and why you're here, and that the true reality exists out of this space that we're in now, and our connection to each other and source. Um, it's it's so good, but Earth is so good too, because, like, I like games and I like video games. Like, when I was younger, I grew up in the Nintendo era when it first came out, Atari and Nintendo. And I like the challenge. I like the challenge of getting through the level. And Earth is like that if you see it like that. It's just a little bit, it's like a game. If you look at it like a game or a video game that you're just trying to beat the level, I mean, it's a lot more fun, I think.
You're right. And we're a friend of mine said in a podcast, he's like, we're already spiritual beings. We're here to be human beings. It's okay to not be perfect. It's okay to fuck up.
Yeah.
And we just have to be gentle with ourselves and be human and enjoy it and just learn from your mistakes and move on and have fun doing it. It's all about the journey.
Yeah, enjoy it. Like, so, I feel like this world was created to enjoy and to be filled or not. It's your choice. It's all here. It's all here for the taking. It's your perception of the reality you want to be in and the perspective that you hold towards interacting with this reality. But I think God just wants us to have fun and be blessed. But God gives us the choice ultimately if we want to experience that. And so you have to take responsibility for your reality, and you got to take responsibility for how you move your way through this reality. And once you understand that, like, it's all open and it's all good.
Mm, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Where can people find you, Judea? Plug your podcast.
My podcast with Patty Davis is called Spirit Speakers Podcast, and we're on all of the podcast listening formats. And you can find us directly at spiritspeakerspodcast.com. And my personal website is alignandshinekauai.com. And yeah, that's all the contacts there. Oh, my Instagram, at Align and Shine Kauai as well. Kauai.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you. This has been such a pleasure. I could continue talking forever, and maybe we could do
Yeah.
this again sometime.
Yeah, perhaps. Let's
Because
do
I
it.
would love to hear more stories. I know that there's so much more
There's so
that,
much.
yeah, there's just so much.
Okay. Well, it
Alrighty.
was so great to connect with you and be a part of your show. This is really great. I love what you're doing. And much love
Thank
to
you.
you. Blessings.
Blessings to you too. We'll talk later.
Okay. Aloha.
Bye.